why don't you give me a little bit of background on, we'll start talking about your connection to Windsor. Why don't we start with that?
Well, my connection to Windsor, because I was not brought up here, I'm a native of Bloomfield, but my family moved to the Weetag area of Simsbury in 1973. So not knowing this part of the Pequannock area of Windsor, it was all new to me. But driving down Pequannock Avenue prior to the tornado, I always admired the maple trees and the setting. And then, of course, the tornado came and took the trees away. But it's still Pequannock. It's still Pequannock. It's still home. It's still home.
How did you come to get married in a Windsor church?
Okay. Being a Catholic and marrying a divorcee, it was against the church. And my pastor in Bloomfield refused to marry us. So I had to look for other avenues. And my husband's neighbor told him about the Pequannock Church because his son had gotten married in the Pequannock Community Church and raved about Reverend Silver. So I made a phone call, and George and I met with Reverend Silver, who turned out to be the most dearest person ever. And everything just rolled along. Yeah.
That's great. So tell me what your recollections are of October 3rd, 1979.
October 3rd, I was working in an office on Cottage Grove Road in Bloomfield, Northwestern Mutual Insurance Group. And my office had a window facing Cottage Grove Road. And the radio was on, and everything was, be aware, severe thunderstorms this afternoon. And didn't really think much of it until I was ready to leave in the afternoon, when everybody in the office said, we better stay here because it doesn't look very good outside. It got black, and the rain and the wind. And it lasted for a short time at that point, but didn't think much of it until I drove home and talking with my mom and stuff. And it must have been around, I want to say, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, around supper time, when the phone rang, and it was Reverend Silver. And it was like, okay, why are you calling? But he didn't want to talk to me first. He wanted to talk to my mom. Now, this is going to be very emotional for me. I hate to say this, but in a way, the tornado was a blessing in disguise for my mom, because she always wanted me to be married in a Catholic church. So now the tornado comes and destroys the sanctuary of the Pequannock Community Church. And Reverend Silver called to tell my mom that she got her wish, that her daughter was going to get married in a Catholic church. And the pastor, Father Doherty, said that he understood the situation and that he would be in the background on the altar when we got married. And then he told me, he spoke to me and said, are your invitations out? And I said, yes. He said, well, you better call or send a note out to everybody saying that the wedding will take place at 12 noon, St. Joseph's Church.
Wow. So so what was your actual wedding day? 'Cause
Our actual wedding date was October 27th at 12 noon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was that day like, that your wedding day?
Well, getting married that late in October, my only prayers were, please don't let it snow. And because we had to come from Weetag over the mountain into Windsor. And, but I said, just, dear Lord, give me a day that will be nice for everybody to travel. And it was. It was a cloudy day. It was a cool day. We were supposed to have, we had plans on going down to Washington Park to take pictures. And unfortunately, it was cold. And we decided not to. We took our wedding pictures inside the church instead. Yeah, but yeah, you know, I look at my pictures today and I think, you know, it was a day for everybody to just enjoy themselves, reflect on what has happened, and whether the sun was shining or not, the dear Lord gave us a good day.
That's great. Tell me, you're not from Windsor, but you got to know Windsor. So, what was your first time back in Windsor after the tornado? Like, what was your experience when you came back and saw what everything looked like?
After the wedding, of course, we went down to Florida because George had lost. My father-in-law passed away 6 days before our wedding, so we had to go to Florida to help his stepmom with all the preparations and stuff. So when we got back to Windsor, it was, we drove around to see the devastation, but people I found and still find are very open, very warm, and very helping. For those who needed things, people were there to help out. And that's why, even though I grew up in Bloomfield, and the town was that way when I grew up, I still find that Windsor is still a very warm and loving town, but Pequannock especially. I have to. I mean, that's where I live. I mean, the center of town is beautiful, but I do love our Pequannock area.
Let me see. What do you remember from your wedding day about what the landscape looked like outside? Do you remember having any thoughts?
Yeah, well, of course, like I said, the maple trees were all down, debris around. Even though the town was doing a good job of clearing up and stuff. I have pictures in my wedding album of what the school, Pequannock School, looked like. The classroom in the back lost the roof. You could see trees and debris in the back of the school. Yeah, it didn't look like a war zone, but you knew something went through. And family members who attended the wedding, who knew about the tornado but didn't see it until they actually came to the church, they said, yeah, this was really something that to see, because they've never seen anything like that.
Did you were you aware of the cleanup effort? Did you read anything in the paper about that, or know anybody that was involved in that?
No, I didn't know anybody that was involved in it, but yes, there was. If you came into the area, there was always. I mean, the cleanup was unbelievable. Especially with the bank at the corner of Rainbow, and even in the Pioneer Drive area, the homes that were destroyed. The cleanup it took time and effort, but you could see every day where it was getting better.
Did you live in town now?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
You live up in Pequannock now?
We live on Hilltop Road, which is off the Stone Road area, and my backyard is the Farmington River.
Very nice, very nice. What's your sense of? So obviously, this community meant a lot to you.
Mm-hmm.
You moved into it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your sense of the kind of people that lived in that area?
From what I had gathered, and now even more so, Pequannock was a very blue-collar area, farmers, tobacco farmers, big Lithuanian community. St. Joseph's Church was the community of the Lithuanians, especially with St. Casimir's right down in the corner. Like I said, I love Windsor. Yes, I do get into the center of town on several occasions. But Pequannock it reminds me sometimes of growing up in Bloomfield with tobacco fields. Very quaint. And it has changed because of new developments and stuff, but basically it's still the same farming town from a little area of Windsor.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with that. That's when I was growing up, I always thought Pequannock was like the rich part of town.
No,
But
no,
no, but
no,
it's
no.
so
It's rich in many other ways
Mhm.
instead of, monetary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's just go back to your wedding a little bit. Did you actually see the church when after it was?
Pequannock Community Church? Yes.
Tell
yes.
me what your thoughts was when you saw it.
The thoughts were when I saw what had happened to the sanctuary, it really hurt because being a religious person, that's the house of God. And why did you have to touch this? But like I said, everything happens for a reason. And they bounced back, God bless them, and they got stronger.
When Pastor Silver was here, he was talking about how daunting it was to the thought of rebuilding. So tell me a little bit about him, your experience with him. What kind of man was he?
Reverend Silver will always have a soft spot in our hearts. When I first met him, it was, oh boy, I had a pastor that was tough. Is this guy going to be tough? But after explaining my situation to him, he was so understanding, said not to worry, we would get through things. And in the Catholic Church, even to this day, 6 months prior to getting married, you sit and have classes to make sure that this is the right person and everything's going to go well. Well, we did the same thing with Reverend Silver. He wanted to make sure that I, being a single person, marrying a divorcee with children, even though they were older, I wanted to make sure that I was making the right move, that George was making the right move. And our sessions were just prayerful, enjoyable. We talked about everything. We didn't hold anything back. And at the end, he said, I guess you guys were just meant for each other. So he's, like I said, he's been very, very special.
Do you think that he was the right person to lead that congregation?
Oh, most certainly. Most certainly. Most certainly.
Yeah, why do you think that?
Well, because after the wedding and seeing him afterwards, because we had attended several functions at their church, just the love from the congregation towards him, and I know that several people were upset knowing that he was going to retire and leave, and it's hard because you get used to one person, and they decide. It's like the Catholic Church. We get used to one priest being our pastor, and down the road he gets transferred, and you have to get used to another person.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Just a couple more questions, I think. Tell me, I guess maybe just one more question. Kind of tell me what when you think of that time period. Tell me what effect you think the tornado had overall on Windsor.
I don't think that we, as residents of Windsor, ever thought that we could get hit with a tornado. I mean, you hear of tornadoes in the Midwest and other places, but not here. But then again, like I said, the only one that knows the answer to that is the man up above. And he does things for a reason.
Definitely. Anything that I didn't ask you that you want people to know, whether it's about Windsor or your wedding or the tornado, anything we didn't touch on?
Not that I know of. I think we hit everything.
I think
Yeah.
I'm looking at my questions here, and I think we answered everything. All right.
I will add, though, excuse me, I
Yeah.
will add that today I have been a member of St. Joseph's Church for 39 years, and my darling husband became a Catholic in 2019. Yes. And this is very touchy. But when I went to my pastor, Father Vargo, at the time, because George had to go through classes, once he became a Catholic, Father came to us afterwards and said, "You have an angel," and she's looking down, and she's got the biggest smile. Bye, Bob.
That's a wonderful story. Oh my goodness! And how wonderful that he that he converted. I mean,
You know, he went to church with me every year. I mean, every day, every Sunday he was involved with church because I'm involved with church. He was always with me, and we were having lunch out at Evergreen one day. It was 2012, and he, out of the blue, he said to me, "How can I join the church?" And at that point, I dropped the spoon that I had in my hand and said, "Excuse me?"
Wow.
And he goes, "How do I join your church?" And I said, "We'll talk to Father." And I said, where is this coming from? And he said, he had been thinking about it for so long. He was never baptized, no church affiliation, other than a grandmother maybe taking him to church services every now and then. But he felt at home with St. Joseph's. He got to, everybody at church thought he was a Catholic. You know, he's helping everything out. But anyways, yeah, so being a divorcee, Father Vargo helped us through getting papers signed and everything. And of course, I had to write a letter to Pope Benedict asking for an annulment of his first marriage, only because there were no witnesses for George. So I had to write a letter to Pope Benedict.
Wow.
And in the meantime, George was taking classes with our Deacon Ron. And in September of 2012, got a letter back from Pope Benedict acknowledging the annulment. But in the meantime, George's first wife had passed. And now that cleared the road for him to get into the Catholic Church, and to have our marriage blessed in the Catholic Church.
Oh, that's
so we have two anniversaries. October 19th will be 6 years that our marriage has been blessed in the Catholic Church, but then, of course, October 27th.
Wow.
So
everything happens for a reason.
everything
right?
happens for a reason. Exactly. That's.
Wow.
I keep saying that.